In the midst of his short story collection Red Calvary, Isaac Babel takes the reader inside an old Polish church, where he asserts there was a peculiar, seductive view of the moral sufferings of the sons of men. The fragments of a statue of St. Valentine are scattered on the floor, resembling the bones of a chicken. Nearby, a drunk and bloodied Alfonkabida, the narrator's platoon commander, is wildly playing the church's organ, angering a band of Cossacks trying to sleep amidst the rubble. Babel writes of this moment, "Each sound was a song, and all the sounds were separated one from the other. The song, its thick melody, would last for a moment and pass into another. I listened, looked around, and the traces of destruction did not seem very great to me. The destruction of this church pales in comparison to the destruction of the soul." The scene captures the essence of Red Calvary, an assortment of scenes with little relationship to each other, providing snapshots of the chaotic violence of the conflict known as the Soviet-Polish War. In Red Calvary, Babel depicts a horrific landscape in which a brutalized generation finds a cause in communism, and his own struggle to define his identity amidst that landscape. Isaac Babel was born to a Jewish family in Odessa in 1894. As a child, he received an extensive education in classical languages, music, and Hebrew. His pre-war short stories are reflections upon his Jewish roots. In 1917, he was conscripted out of university in Petrograd and dispatched to the Romanian front, where he soon contracted malaria. He returned to the city soon after the Bolshevik coup and found his work as a journalist. In 1920, skirmishes between Bolshevik Russia and a newly independent white Poland escalated into all-out war. Babel joined Semyon Budyani's 1st Cavalry Army and went to the front as a war correspondent for a state news agency and as a contributor to Budyani's propaganda newspaper Red Trooper. After less than a year, he returned to Odessa, exhausted and asthmatic. There he began work on the stories of Red Calvary. In 1924, his stories were republished in major journals, garnering him national fame and earning him a powerful enemy in General Budyani, who disliked the gruesome contrast of Babel's work to his own well-cultivated propagandic image of his former command. The decade between the outbreak of the First World War and Babel's Moscow publication of Red Calvary was characterized by a chaotic juxtaposition of new and old technologies. The Tachanka was a simple innovation, the mounting of a machine gun on a horse-drawn hay cart. Driving the narrator's Tachanka is a soldier named Grishuk, conscripted for the Tsar's army, captured by the Germans, and then conscripted by the Bolsheviks. He has not seen his wife or children in 5 years. The sight of a wounded comrade with intestines sagged down to his knees invokes a sense not of horror or grief in Grishuk, but of futility. Why do women go to all that effort, he says? Why the matchmaking and marriages? Why do godfathers carouse at weddings? It makes me want to laugh. You can disarm the Tachanka and return it to a field with little wear. You cannot do the same with Grishuk. He has been brutalized. War has become his default mindset. The process of brutalization experienced within the Russian Empire was distinct from that undergone in Germany. The Russian people had not merely become disillusioned with their leaders. The Tsar, the nation's father, had been executed on their behalf. In addition to the horrors of war, the deceased Tsar's former subjects saw, in the words of historian Dietrich Beru, a crumbling of state authority and collapse of civilization triggered by the First World War, which resulted in an anarchic vacuum of extreme violence. A vacuum to which the Bolsheviks brought order, providing the brutalized with a purpose for the violence. Nikita Balmashov, the most fervent communist among Red Calvary's characters, testifies of his conscription into the ranks of the imperialists to defend Citizen Point Care, until Comrade Lenin, together with Comrade Trotsky, redirected by brutal bayonet, and pointed it towards a given set of intestines and a new piece of belly fat. His conviction to the cause is so strong that upon discovering a woman smuggling a brick of salt disguised as a baby, he executes her. No order to do so is necessary. In another story, General Matvey Pavlichenko provides his autobiography to an audience. He had returned to his landlord after 5 years of war. Though admitting his own illiteracy, he tells the landlord that he comes bearing a letter from Lenin, and read from a blank page a decree granting him the authority to take the lives of the various peoples at his discretion for the foundation of a radiant future. The landlord merely replies that blood has become cheap. Matvey tramples him for more than an hour. He does not kill him, though, for to shoot him is to pardon him. Matvey enjoys inflicting pain. The Red Army has only pointed this joy at a given set of intestines. Babel struggles with the idea of this new world he describes. He is a communist, yes, but he's horrified by the violence, and also wants to retain his cultural and religious roots. To Babel's eyes, the Jewish population of eastern Poland, in contrast to the Jewish community in his native Odessa, inhabit lifeless shuttles without a warm pulse of blood. They are at the mercy of both armies. He describes one old Jewish man, caught in a headlock, having his throat cut with a Cossack's dagger. This deed is done by those Babel fights beside, not against. Gedali, an elderly Jewish communist, says he believes the revolution is the deed of good men. But then he reconsiders that statement. But good men do not kill, he says. But the Poles are also bad men. So who will tell Gedali where is the revolution? And where is the counter-revolution? Gedali says instead a new revolution is necessary. He believes in a fourth international, to supersede the third, whose flag the Red Cavalry wave. Gedali dies disappointed. But before he does so, he introduces the narrator to the Rebbe, a Hasidic master of Talmudic tradition. The Rebbe has a quivering, unhealthy son, with whom he fears his dynasty will die. 4 months later, the narrator finds in the figure of a young, clumsy soldier the Rebbe's son. Babel eloquently describes the boy's belongings. Here, everything was dumped together, Babel says. The warrants of the agitator and the commemorative booklets of the Jewish poet. Portraits of Lenin and Maimonides lay side by side. In the margins of communist leaflets swam crooked lines of ancient Hebrew verse. In a sad, meager rain, they fall on me. Pages of the Songs of Songs and revolver cartridges. The Rebbe's son dies soon after, of disease, long before he can reach the battlefield. Babel seems only partially sure that the two identities can coexist in this new European landscape. After the death of Lenin and Stalin's rise to power, Babel would continue to make a name for himself as one of the Soviet Union's premier literary figures. On 2 occasions, Babel would visit his estranged wife and daughter in Paris, but on each, he would return to the Soviet Union to continue writing. His former superior and premier critic, General Budyonny, would only rise in stature, ascending to Stalin's inner circle as one of the first 5 marshals of the Soviet Union. In May of 1939, Isaac Babel was arrested. He would confess, under torture, to being a Trotskyite and a foreign spy. In January of 1940, he was brought before court and sentenced. His last words at those proceedings were, "I am asking for only one thing. Let me finish my work." The following day, he was executed by firing squad.